Smoking. Smoking is the biggest cause of preventable deaths in England, accounting for nearly 80,000 deaths each year. 1 in 2 smokers will die from a smoking-related disease, according to NHS Smoke Free. Smoking cigarettes affects the entire body, including the brain, heart, lungs, skin, mouth, and throat. So why do people smoke? Often people will smoke to relax or to cope with stress. People will get stressed and they will use going out for a cigarette to take a break from things. In fact, often in offices, they will have designated smoking areas and will allow smoking breaks. Many people believe it calms them down, and this is because nicotine is a mood-altering drug, and it seems to kind of hide the effects of frustration and anger and anxiety when it's inhaled. So short term, it may reduce the feelings of stress. However, as I'll explain later on, in the long term, it can actually induce stress instead. Another reason people smoke is that it's habitually inherited. So, for example, if someone's parents smoke and they grow up in an environment where their parents smoke and their family smokes, they're more likely to smoke themselves as their role models are smoking, so it encourages them to smoke. Typically, smoking is more likely to occur in those who are of low socioeconomic status, which is very ironic considering the expenses of smoking. But this would probably link back to the idea that it helps relieve stress, as obviously living in poverty is going to induce a state of stress. Therefore, smoking might be a way to cope with that. Another reason for smoking might be peer pressure. So, similarly to alcohol, young people are more susceptible to this peer pressure and are more likely to feel pressurized into smoking. If their friends are smoking, they might feel like they want to smoke as well so that they can join them and be the same as them. They don't want to be the odd one out. And similarly, there's obviously many designated smoking areas. And if a group of friends go off to the smoking area, you're more likely to smoke as well. Again, instead of being the odd one out of the group. There's a long list of effects of smoking, and all of them are negative. So the poisons from the tar in cigarettes actually makes your blood thicker, and therefore increases the chances of blood clotting. This also therefore increases your blood pressure and your heart rate, making your heart have to work harder than normal. And this also narrows your arteries, reducing the amount of oxygen-rich blood circulating to your organs. This can obviously lead to more severe health complications such as stroke and heart disease. The carbon monoxide from cigarettes increases your heart rate, which obviously, like I said, increases the risk of blood clots. The chemicals damage the coronary arteries, and this increases the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Additionally, cigarettes, the poisons in it kind of weaken the stomach muscles, and therefore increases the risk of stomach cancers. You also increase your risk of kidney cancers. So the NHS actually states that research has shown that if you regularly smoke 10 cigarettes a day, you are 1.5 times more likely to develop kidney cancer compared with a non-smoker. This is increased to twice as likely if you smoke 20 or more cigarettes a day. So obviously it's clear just how much of a dramatic effect smoking can have on your health. Other effects that smoking has includes a reduction in the oxygen to the skin, which can cause a yellowing or grey complexion and can also cause wrinkles. Damages to the blood vessels, to the reproductive organs, which obviously can potentially decrease fertility as well. You have an increased risk of cervical cancer as well. Potential bad breath, stained teeth, which again might impact you socially as well, because it's not particularly attractive or appealing, so therefore people may not be as inclined to associate with you or socialize with you. You also increase the risk of lip or throat cancer. And according to NHS Smoke Free, smoking increases your risk of having a stroke by at least 50%, which can cause brain damage and death potentially at the extremes. And by smoking, you actually double your risk of dying from a stroke. So obviously, the initial impact of smoking, where it makes your blood thicker, increases your chance of clots, and therefore increases your heart rate as well. That impact that it has on your arteries and the therefore knock-on effect of the increased chance of having a stroke, you can kind of see how the smaller effects from the start of smoking and from each time you smoke a cigarette have a really dramatic impact on the health of your body systems, such as your heart or your lungs. So therefore you also actually have an increased risk of pneumonia, lung cancer, and COPD, which is a progressive and debilitating disease. It's basically the name for a collection of lung diseases, including chronic bronchitis and emphysema, which is where you have difficulty breathing and you have chest infections as well. So as you can see by the fact that I've basically listed each of those negative effects of smoking, you can understand just how much of an impact smoking has on your health, because it affects all areas of your body. It affects your vital organs, from your heart to your lungs to your kidney to your liver. It affects your skin, it affects your brain, it affects all areas of your body negatively and has an extremely negative impact on your health and increases your chances of very significant diseases and cancers, therefore obviously increasing your risk of death as well. Obviously, similar to alcohol again, when you're talking about smoking, you have to discuss addiction, because nicotine is addictive. Therefore, once you start, it's very difficult to stop. Therefore, once you start, it's difficult to get out of the situation where you're damaging your health. So that's why there's been the invention of vapes and other alternatives to try and aid people in stopping smoking, because we know there's such a big risk with smoking and such a big impact on health. Alternatives are so prominent, and there's constant workforce behind finding alternatives that would help ease people out of smoking. Similarly, there's campaigns to try and stop smoking as well, like even on the smoking, the cigarette packaging, there's deterrents on there as well. So there's images of the potential extremes of the health impacts that smoking has, usually of lung cancers or diseases, to try and deter people from smoking by looking at that. It's not advertised as much as it used to be in the past, obviously, because we didn't know the effects of smoking. There was a lot of advertisement towards it, whereas nowadays it's not advertised at all. It's just simply there, available in shops. And there's obviously those images that I mentioned to try and deter people from actually buying it.